Organizing a collection of poems or short stories can easily feel overwhelming. I discovered this the hard way when I put together my short story collection, When Magic Calls. Helping other authors arrange their collections is a very different experience from arranging your own. You can easily overthink it or give up and just shove everything together. Neither of those work. So today I want to talk about how to expertly arrange a short story or poetry collection. I recommend starting with your emotional arc, the emotional resonance you want to leave with your reader. Then think about the length, style, and quality of the pieces in your collection. Before we dive into each of those, if you hang on until the end of this video, I'll let you know how you can get a free timeline of a book, which will help you figure out when you should even be thinking about the arrangement of your collection. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and author. Let's start with arrange your collection for emotional resonance. Like a novel, your poetry or short story collection should have an overall emotional arc. You should have already thought about your theme, so all of the pieces fit together. Now you need to decide what emotion you want to leave your reader with. Do you want them to leave feeling thrilled, terrified, bittersweet, in love? What do you want that emotion to be? Also think about your genre. This can help you figure out what that emotion should be. Horror readers like to feel terrified. Leave them feeling terrified. Romance readers are reading for love. Leave them feeling that high of love. Arrange your pieces so they build up to that emotion. End with the one that's going to leave your reader feeling that emotion the strongest. Similarly, think about arranging your collection to get your reader to feel differently about your theme or the subject matter you're exploring. For example, if you want to leave your reader believing that infatuation is fleeting, pick all of the stories that show the consequences of infatuation or it fading away the fastest, put those towards the end. Put the other ones at the beginning so it builds up towards that emotional idea. Or think about something like The Dragon Book. This is an anthology that is a collection of different takes on dragons. The curators of that collection put the most conventional dragons at the beginning and then built up to the most different dragons that were a completely unique take on the idea of a dragon. You might arrange your collection similarly to create that sort of emotion of wonder or inspiration. In my collection, When Magic Calls, I wanted to show both the light and the dark sides of magic, but I love that wonder emotion that magic can leave a reader with, and I didn't want to lose that. So what I did is I put the lighter pieces at the beginning and the end of my collection, and the darker pieces in the middle. So it created this sort of bump in emotion. That created a true emotional arc within my collection. So which emotion do you want to leave your reader feeling? Do you want it to build up to that emotion or have an arc, more like mine did? Think about that and then look at the pieces that you have written and decide which ones convey that emotion the strongest. Then you'll know where each piece belongs in the order. Next, arrange your collection by length and form. In addition to the emotional arc of your overall collection, you need to think about how the length is affecting your reader's experience. If you have a bunch of pieces that are different lengths and you shove all of the super short ones together, that section is going to feel really choppy to a reader. Or if you shove all of the really long ones together, that section could feel like it's dragging because it takes a lot longer to finish each story. So we want to create some variety when we are arranging our pieces when it comes to that length. There are two exceptions to this. If you have one piece that is extra long, like you have a novella in a short story collection or an epic poem in a poetry collection, conventionally that super long piece goes at the end. That's the expected format. I'm not saying you have to do that, I'm just saying that's convention. Also, if you're going to arrange your collection by part, and each part has its own mini theme or its own mini take on the theme, you could have all of the shorter pieces in one part and all of the longer pieces in another part, and it wouldn't have the same choppy or dragging effect on a reader. Similarly, you need to think about the structure and format of the pieces in your collection. In Rupi Kaur's poetry collection, Milk and Honey, she has both short free verse and short prose poems. If she had shoved all of the prose poems together, they could be difficult to wade through because prose poems in general are a little bit harder to read. They're just denser. So instead, she mixed these ones together in her collection, which meant that there was never a section that felt too dense and like I was having to work hard as a reader to get through it. So think about that structure as well. You can use that structure to help create your emotional resonance, and instead of just mixing it all together, you might use it to build upon itself. For example, when I was in graduate school, a peer of mine put together a collection that was about freedom, kind of coming into one's own, becoming one's own person. In that collection, it started with very rigid traditional poetry formats, and then it moved into free verse and erasure towards the end. And it was this evolution of structure that mimicked the evolution of the narrator. So you can use your structure and format in that way as well. In my case, I had to think about point of view along with the emotional arc and the length of my pieces, because I used lots of different points of view. I had almost all of them, I think. I had first person, second person, third person, omniscient, multiple points of view stories. What I didn't want to happen was to have all of one point of view in one section and then all of the rest of them just mixed up together. So when I was arranging my collection, next to the name of each story, I wrote the point of view. So I would put Letters from a Woo, first person, Bones of the Soul, omniscient. And that helped me keep that in mind when I was arranging my collection. Next, arrange your collection with quality in mind. So, in addition to the emotional arc and the length or the structure, think about the quality of your pieces. People are most likely to remember the beginning and end of something, whether it is a performance, a song, a book, or a collection of short stories or poems. So you want to put some of your highest quality pieces at the beginning and the end. I like to do this to help with that emotional resonance. So I will pick the highest quality one that best shows that emotion at the beginning, and then the next one at the end, or something along those lines. So I'm looking at not just the quality, but the quality of that emotion as well. This way, when a reader remembers your collection, they're going to best remember your highest quality pieces. Now, there is an opposite school of thought, which is the front-loading idea, where you put all of your best pieces at the beginning in case they don't finish your book, so that way they never get to the worst ones. In my opinion, if you're hoping people don't get to the end of your collection, those pieces shouldn't be in there in the beginning. Also, what happens when someone does finish that collection? Are you just going to leave them with sort of a lukewarm piece? So it's not my favorite idea, but it works for other people. It might work for you too. I am a fan of the tentpole structure when it comes to quality of stories. That idea is that you create tentpoles throughout your collection that kind of lift up the overall quality of your pieces. So you would put the best at the first and the last, like we talked about, but you would also put them in the middle, and you might put one exactly in the middle and then two kind of holding up in between those ones. I did this tentpole method for When Magic Calls, and I figured out which ones were my best by asking my beta readers. I asked 3 questions of my beta readers to help me figure out which pieces might be of the highest quality or might appeal the most to my ideal readers. So the first question I asked is, which piece was your favorite? The second question, which piece was your least favorite? And the third question, how did you feel about the order of the pieces? What order would you have preferred? That was a 2-part question. What I found is people were not very likely to suggest a different order. They might comment that they didn't like the order or something like that, but they weren't really willing to reorder it for me. That takes work, I get it. But they did answer the first 2 questions in a way that was super helpful. Many of them put, I can't decide, I like these 2 stories the best. And what I found is there were 3 stories that were just everyone's favorites, and then there were 2 that were everyone's kind of least favorites, and it had more to do with there being an unlikable character in them, which told me the story was working oddly at the same time as telling me it wasn't their favorite. So what I did is I put one favorite at the beginning, one in the middle, and one in the end, and I created that tentpole structure. This also worked for me because those happened to be 3 of the longest pieces in my collection, so they helped vary that length. And it verified that the last story was one of the best. I always felt like that was potentially the strongest piece in there, and I had it at the end because it had that emotional quality I was going for, and these beta readers verified that. They reassured me that that was a good place to put that piece. So, when it comes to arranging your collection, you can also ask for help from your beta readers. But think about the quality and decide which quality format you might use for your structure. I want to leave you with an editor and author's advice on arranging a collection. I know I just threw a lot at you. You're probably thinking, how am I supposed to keep the emotion, the length, the structure, and the quality all in mind when I'm putting together my collection? Well, some of these things should naturally fall into place, so don't stress over it too much. As humans, we are hardwired to find patterns. Let that biology work for you. Look for patterns in your story. Use that to inform your collection arrangement decisions. Then decide which of these you think is the most important. For me, honestly, I think there are 2. I think the most important is that emotional resonance. The more emotion I can leave a reader with, the longer my collection is going to linger with them, the more likely they're going to be to remember and recommend it to others. So that emotion is a huge piece for me. I also think the quality falls in line with that. I want to put the highest quality pieces at the beginning and the end because those are going to help me create that emotion in the strongest way. Length, structure, yes, I consider those, but not as much as those other 2 parts. You might have a different thing that you consider the most important. That's totally fine. But just remember, don't stress about it too much. We are hardwired to find those patterns. Also, you should have already curated your collection by the time you are arranging it. If you haven't already thought about which pieces are going to make it, what your theme is, all of those bits, you need to do that before you start arranging. I do have another video that will help with this. It's linked at the end, and it's called How to Create a Riveting Collection of Short Stories or Poems. Also, trust your instincts. If you're writing short stories that are memoirs, chronological order is a perfectly acceptable arrangement for those pieces. If you just really love this piece, you feel it's your strongest, and you want to leave people with that emotion, like I did, put it at the end. Trust those instincts. If you put a lot of thought into your order and you're worried that your reader isn't going to pick up on the significance of it, put your reasoning in the introduction. That will help you make sure that your reader understands that you did think about the arrangement when you put together this collection. Now that I've given you a bunch of ideas for how you can arrange your collection, I want you to think about some collections you've read. What was their order? What was your favorite part about the arrangement of those collections? Share that in the comments below so that you can inspire others to arrange their collections in an effective way. And for more videos on collections, novels, and other aspects of writing, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and author. To find out more about me, go to ignitedinkwriting.com. That is where you will find a free timeline of a book, which will help you figure out if you're even ready to start thinking about the order of your collection or not. And go to caitlinburvey.com to see more about my collection, When Magic Calls. You might flip through it, see if the order inspires you, and look at how I arranged my pieces. I found examples really helpful when I was deciding on the order of my book. And now it's your turn. Start with the emotional resonance. What emotion do you want your reader to feel? Then think about the length, structure, and quality of the pieces in your collection to ignite your ink.